morning and welcome everyone to our webinar this morning on Elevate. This morning, it's all about moving our assets, your clients' assets from the standard LISP to Innate. And my guest this morning is Mike Summerton, Chief Experience Officer at Innate, and the two of us will take this opportunity to do a quick recap of what we covered in our last session, which is, of course, available on our CPD portal, and discuss how our Elevate journey is unfolding as we move through to our next tranche of clients being moved from standard LISP into the Innate platform. We're going to talk about what we've already done and the lessons we learned from that, and why, of course, we think Innate is so much better than standard LISP. I'm Georgina Smith, and I look after the group's investment products into our distribution teams. And I'm expecting lots of questions today, so please do type them in the chat. I'm already seeing them come through. Thanks so much. And we'll get to as many of those as we possibly can. Of course, also for you to remember is this is the second of several engagements, so please don't panic. If you think of questions after today, you can ask your sales team or simply send it to hello@Innate or save it for the next webinar. So Mike, tell us a little bit about the journey we've been on so far to get us here.
Good morning, George, and good morning to everyone online. It's certainly been an interesting year, and actually, I guess several years in the making. You know, we as everyone knows, we've stood up this brand new investment platform called Innate. It's not so brand new anymore. We've had our doors open for quite a few years now, and growing assets both with new flows and also from the transfers from standard LISP. And so, if we can just sort of step back and say, we're like, wow, we're doing this whole thing. And the rationale for us, firstly, for investing in new platform technology as a theme, I think for platform providers in the industry, these things sort of come around every 20 years or so. And if you look at some of the other providers, they're either on some sort of internally built system, something which was off the shelf perhaps 30 years ago, and or some sort of mix of those. And we recognized in 2016 that we needed to invest in our new platform technology. The old standard LISP served us well, but certainly is on an aging piece of technology that in the coming years will start to become difficult to service. And so that was why we chose to replatform. It is a big exercise, and many of the folks online today would be using the Innate investment platform, which is digital and available online. But the back end of that system is a sort of future-ready, platform-specific, currently hosting, trillions of rands, dollars, and pounds across multiple different jurisdictions in other countries. And so, really, it's ready for the next 20 years of platform growth. And then, there's one thing to build a new platform, but then this year, what we have been doing is moving those client balances and client records from the legacy standard LISP system into Innate. And we did think ahead a little bit, and we've built the Innate platform around the same legal entity that supports the standard LISP. So Standard Wealth Management, as you know and love it, it's the Cat 3 license which we have. And so, technically moving from one platform to another, we're not having to sell all of our client units. It's all a unit transfer. And if you're a fund manager who's seeing this move, it actually just moves from one bulk account in Stanlib's name to another bulk account in Stanlib's name. So it's quite a neat transfer of assets. The technical challenge is actually around the data, making sure all of the client data shifts across to the new platform correctly. So, and that's where we find ourselves today. This year we've had 2 successful tranches so far. In May, this audience wouldn't have been aware of it, but we took a relatively small cohort of Liberty advisors through the process. We had roughly 127 financial advisors in May move their books, about 4,000 clients, and roughly 4 billion worth of assets moved in May. And I think the technical team were quite proud of their achievement. They rounded to about 17 cents with the external recon. So that was quite impressive. And in September, we were a bit more ambitious, and we moved 24 billion rands worth of assets. That included a number of IFA and Liberty advisors. just short of 800 advisors were involved in that tranche, and about 18, just short of 18,000 clients, individual clients who were moved. And again, that on 24 billion rands of assets, I think the external recon in terms of missing units was about 1 rand and 27 cents. So it was very accurate and very rigorous in terms of how we look after client data. Now, I think, and I saw one of the questions online, certainly from a client experience perspective, we would have communicated to many clients who were in scope for tranche two, and then perhaps for some reason you didn't move as part of the exercise. And I think that's what I'm calling the expectation gap. And the expectation gap was really we had all these comms, and then during the go live, you didn't quite make it across. And so nothing really changed for you, Mr. Client. You stayed behind at Standard Lisp and everything continued as per normal. But we'd created this expectation. And for quite a few clients, some books was 10% of advisor book, others was closer to 50%. And it was really around safeguarding client balances. And if you can imagine, there's a whole series of data points in each client record that we have to map very carefully so that they land in Innate and we can continue to deliver the service that they were expecting at Standard. So, as an example, if you're in a model portfolio, there's a fee on that portfolio. Perhaps there's a regular debit order coming in or a regular withdrawal paying out. And all of those items need to be mapped correctly. So wherever, as we did lots of test runs to lead up to this exercise in September. But during the live run, if your data, your client's data didn't match up perfectly, then we were forced to keep you back at Standard. There was a sort of point of no return, and we had to make that judgment call. And we much rather sort of inconvenience clients slightly by staying behind at Standard than move you and let you land and then have problems down the road. And so it was really a precautionary measure and quite a natural part of data migrations. We could certainly have managed the comms around that a bit better. And what we've done for tranche three is we're going to enrich those client data lists. So your client data lists are going to be uploaded to a CPD portal, and you can download those lists and see which of your clients effectively will make it for tranche three. And we can get into some of those more specifics a bit later, George.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Yes, a lot of information there. Just want to quickly answer Cecilia's question, who's asking if there's going to be a recording of today. Absolutely. It'll be available on the CPD portal that Mike's just mentioned. You can get to that via our website. It'll just take a couple of days to get through to there. Mike, you mentioned there about T2 and what a success it was. And I think it's important, of course, from what you said, there's no CGT or anything like that. It is a straight unit transfer when we move from Standard Lisp to Innate. But I want to just sort of, because the last time we spoke, we were before T2. And now, of course, we're after T2. And you've mentioned some of the lessons you learned there, but maybe perhaps color in some of that detail, if you wouldn't mind. Some of the things that we learned, and some of the things that I think are important for T3. Could you do that for me, please, Mike?
Yeah. So I think the one thing which we noticed, firstly, clients don't read emails. Okay. But roughly 60 to 65% of clients opened our various communications, depending on where it was in the process. And it was quite a structured campaign. There were at least 3 emails which clients would have received, sort of a high level introducing some change coming. Then there was a sort of a high level features and benefits of what Innate can offer you as a client. And then the third communication was technically our like regulatory notice, our 30-day notice, and that included some dates around the go live in September. And so I think it was important for clients to read those comms, because clients we engaged with who hadn't read them were felt quite at sea that now my brand has changed, and hold on, I must log into a different portal, and so that sort of communication process is very important for clients to open their emails. We have enhanced, certainly from T1 to T2, we did learn some lessons, and we communicated certainly for some of the living annuitants. We let them know that they were going to get their living annuities paid early in the month. And so I think that went down reasonably well. And certainly for clients who got in touch with their advisors, and I guess we're preaching to the converted, because the advisors who are online today care about their clients and they're wanting to learn about, and you've spent time. So thank you for that in advance. And I think your clients will benefit from that. And so a couple of the things which came up from clients, especially around T2, was who is Innate? And so for the last 7 or 8 years, we have been aggressively marketing to advisors and trying to get in front of advisors and get advisors to use our brand new platform. But we don't really necessarily market too much to direct clients as a platform, as an intermediated platform. And so that I think bringing that message across in some of our comms, that Innate is a registered trademark of the group, the sort of power of Standard Bank and Liberty, etc. You'll see many of those sort of branding references come through in a lot of our comms. So the one sort of underlying angst around a client is this real? Is it genuine? Can I believe it? And so I think we've bolstered that quite a bit. And you'll start to see us, particularly with Tranche 3 coming in March, you'll start to see us showing up in sort of more client-friendly areas, like maybe a couple of airport billboards, just to have that sort of brand credibility coming through for the end client, and sort of they can recognize that Innate is a credible platform. So that was one.
Mike,
And then, yeah,
yes, that's a really good point actually, because there's, and I can see a couple of questions coming through. Maybe you can just touch on this as well. Is kind of where we're going from that brand perspective. Is Stanlib still going to be around? Is Stanlib Lisp still going to be around? Stanlib UT? Maybe we can just touch on that as well.
absolutely. So part of the strategy from several years ago was that this group is on a journey of specialization. And so, absolutely, Stanlib Asset Management is not going anywhere. In fact, Stanlib's performance over the last decade has markedly improved, and they're one of the premier asset managers. And that's because they can focus only on asset management. And they've left the running of the platform to us specialist platform providers. And that's why we've stood up Innate as a specialist investment platform. And it's also an intermediated platform only. So we're never going to go after direct clients as an Innate brand. And so, yes, Stanlib Asset Management into the future, Stanlib are going to continue marketing themselves, but as a professional asset management brand, adding alpha and everything that investment managers do. From an Innate perspective, we're here to work as the advisor's partner and partner with you with whatever you need from a platform perspective. And so those two propositions will stand. Obviously, we'll link hands in the market, and I'm sure you'll see us show up together. But the asset management brand is here to stay from a Stanlib perspective. Stanlib Lisp or Stanlib Platform, I guess, as a term and as a brand, will close towards, at least for new flows, towards the end of this year. And then at the back end of 2026, the Standard platform and actually the tech behind it will be decommissioned. And so that's also part of the plan, is that you must stand up these new platforms, move clients across, but also you need to take care of the old one and sort of decommission it, mothball it, make sure the data is put in a vault somewhere so we can go and find it whenever somebody needs something. So there's a whole lot of sort of regulatory procedures around that, POPI compliance, et cetera, et cetera. So that will happen towards the back end of 2026. But advisors will have access to Stanlib Online for the majority of 2026 for historical statements and tax certificates, etc.
And I think, Mike, it's important to be clear that we're talking about Stanlib Lisp. Stanlib UT is continuing to stay open. And long term, we are looking to simplify the group. So you will see certainly more and more moving on to the Innate platform, and really the fantastic benefits for advisors around that is a consistent servicing experience, a consistent reporting experience. This is the first step of a really exciting journey, I think, for advisors who partner with us. So I also had a question from Steve, and he's asking about offshore. So offshore was a separate migration, and we've been very proud and very successfully come to market with our new offshore platform, which encompasses the entire Standard Bank family within its capability. So it's called Standard Bank International. So you will have seen some other migration, a very small migration from Innate offshore into the Standard Bank International. So, but that's not really the subject of today's webinar. But I understand how perhaps it can be a little bit confusing with everything that we're actually doing on our exciting journey towards innate as we go through. Um, so Mike,
George, can we just cover
other
I see
yes,
one or two questions just around the scope and how do you get selected
yes,
to move
absolutely.
across? So I'm
Go
touching
for
on
it.
Rosanna's question just about what about living annuities, and then on Andre Buckus
Great,
asked about the like how do we select which clients move, and that's
brilliant.
really around which products are in scope. And for tranche three, pretty much everything that is on the standard list is in scope currently. That does involve quite a lot of technical mapping. And so, for example, there are some personal share portfolios sitting at Stanlib Lisp, and mapping those and standing up the proposition on Innate. That's currently underway. But we may need to remove them from scope as we get closer to the time. So those clients won't receive their 30-day notice if they don't make it into the tranche. But for everything else, so the living annuity, all of the classic retirement funds, the investment account, the tax-free savings account, all of those current Stanlib platform products that are open are currently in scope for transfer. And so your living annuity, for example, will get paid early in March next year. And then from April, your living annuity will go back to the same date that you get paid each month on Standard Bliss, the 22nd. It will pay from Innate in April next year. And so I think some of those like product nuances, it's important to sort of make your way through the frequently asked questions. There's quite a bit of detail there talking about, debit orders and regular withdrawals and how we're going to cater for them. Um, but in terms of scope, yes, all clients are in scope. There are obviously some complexities around trusts or other legal entities, and we may need to exclude those. But for now, and in terms of our initial broad scope comms, we've included all of those clients and products.
Thanks, Mike. Probably worth taking, you've mentioned their comms, probably worth taking the audience through what the communication strategy is, and how we are communicating with advisors and clients and the collateral that's available to them as well as we go through this journey.
Yeah, so I think by the time March rolls around, this audience is going to be very sick of hearing from us. So I apologize in advance. But we have we've done quite a bit of work to understand the best practice that goes along with a change of this magnitude. And it's why we're sort of bombarding your inbox with invites to webinars like this. We're sending out much more frequent emails, particularly around items where we've had a lot of questions from advisors, and we're going to raise the prominence of those topics in more frequent weekly updates, which are easy to consume. Maybe make a rule that they go into an innate folder and you can read them at your leisure. But essentially, there's some very key topics around fees, accruals, freeze periods, which it's important to make your way through the detail so that you understand. And if you have any follow-up questions, we're happy to answer them. But essentially, it's sort of three. If you can just think of threes, that everything happens in threes. So there's three big communications. The first one's already gone out. The second one will be around innate and features and benefits, and the third one is the regulatory notice. And within each of those three main communications, there are three steps. We communicate internally so whoever your relationship person is, our call center, a number of executives, we all get the heads up that this communication is going out to the field. And then a day or two later, it goes out to all advisors who are going to receive that communication. And then a day or two later, it goes out to clients. And within the advisor com, you'll be able to see the client email that will be going out to clients as well. So you get a heads up each time before something goes out to clients. And there's a link in both of those to the frequently asked questions document. There's a client version as well as an advisor version. And so we follow that same cadence each time, an internal mailer, an advisor mailer, and a client mailer for each of those three comms. And then we supplement as we get closer to the time, possibly with some SMSs around the early living annuity payment, and weekly updates to advisors around prominent themes. And I mentioned some of those. So it really feels like over communication, it does, but with a change of this magnitude, you cannot over communicate. And we met with providers from the UK and Australia as well to understand what they learned from in their changes when they did these big migrations. Our CIO, for example, was key to the Quilter migration overseas, and so we've got like a host of experience and sort of insight into how to run these. Obviously, it's nothing goes perfectly, but we're trying our best to communicate upfront and answer as many questions in the time leading up to the change so that clients feel comfortable when they wake up on the Tuesday morning and they've got a brand new login, but all their money is sitting there safely.
Absolutely. And I think, it's always good to reflect on the tranches we've done already. And a lot of the feedback from advisors was actually that the communication has been very good and the collateral around the frequently asked questions. Because advisors do have a lot of questions. Understandably, I can see lots coming in on the chat. But the feedback around that was very, very positive. So we're really pleased to kind of keep building on that and making it even more meaningful for advisors. Now let's just I've got a question from Nandi, and I think it's a really useful question to jump into now. So what about if I'm an advisor and I'm not actually onboarded yet to Innate? How are we coping with that? And are we able to move the LISP assets, the Standard LISP assets, even if they haven't been yet onboarded to Innate? And would that be a good idea?
Yeah. That's a great question, actually, and how we've catered for that. Obviously, this audience is very engaged, and they've all got terms of business signed and logins. But for those advisors who perhaps don't engage with Standard List as frequently, or they haven't been reading their emails, what will happen in March is we will continue to move those clients to Innate platform. Attached to the same advisor that they were at Standard List. So nothing changes in terms of the data linkages. But what we'll do is when that advisor finally gets around to logging in and creating their profile, there's a process for those advisors who have not yet signed terms of business with us to sign them electronically. So they'll get a notification that things have changed and there's a link to the T's and C's, and you'll have to click a box before you can get access to your clients. And the main change is really just around the digital way of doing business at Innate. It is slightly different. We've thrown away all the forms and they're all sort of hosted inside digital journeys. And so that's an important sort of upfront acknowledgement that things have changed. And while we want to work with advisors, it's important that they acknowledge that as well. So any advisors who haven't yet opened a code or signed TOBs, they'll get an email with a link around about the date of the tranche, and it will invite them to create their profile. And then there'll be a process where they tick the box to having said that they've read out new T's and C's. And so you won't lose
Thanks.
access, Nandi.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Mike. I think it's another learning from the previous tranches. It's not pleasant, and the more engaged advisors were with using the Innate platform, the better the experiences that they had. No one really likes to go to bed on Friday with Standard Lisp and wake up on Monday with Innate, a platform that you haven't used, and then try and service clients effectively. So really, absolutely, we've said before, we're preaching to the converted here, but I do encourage anyone who is listening who hasn't yet opened an Innate code and experienced the platform. I really do encourage you to do so. You can do so by getting in touch with me or any of the distribution team, and we can get that set up for you. There's plenty of how-to videos on the CPD portal. Masterclasses are there as well, which help advisors get to grips with using the system, which is actually an incredibly intuitive system to use. But it does take a bit of getting used to. We're moving away from forms and onto a digital way forward. Okay, thanks very much for that, Mike. Question about tax certificates. What's going to happen for tax certificates from Anthony? Will there be 2 tax certificates, or will we be doing one?
Yeah, correct. So just like any other transfer between platforms, it's important that we close out the tax reporting for the old investment account. And so that's on a separate product license. It must go to SARS in a particular format. And any new business on Innate, obviously that would also have to form part of an Innate tax certificate. So for any transfer, clients will get 2 tax certificates for the year. I guess with the March tranche, we're allowing all existing Standard Lisp clients to do any top ups to their Standard Lisp TIFSA or RAs within the February time period, and then we'll move everyone over in March. And so it's quite a neat transition. You will still get, two tax certificates, but the from March in on Innate, it'll be all the new Innate business for next year, and you'll still have a short one for the first part of March on Standard Lisp next year for the 26-27 year, but that would be negligible. So I think it's quite a neat transition, particularly over this tranche three, closing out Feb and then starting in March. Whereas September clients, there'll be a substantial Standard Lisp tax certificate and a reasonably substantial Innate one for the 2026 tax year. So clients do receive two tax certificates. With tranche three, the Standard Lisp one will be effectively complete, and the Innate one will start afresh with one or two negligible reporting items.
Thanks, Mike. I'm an advisor. I've got clients, and I've got them on board with moving across to Innate. Do they have to activate their account and go through that process before I can transact for them on Innate?
Okay, so this is quite an important one, and I think it sort of rose to prominence in the month after September. So you don't need to have client activate their account in order that you can transact on that balance. And there was one exception. If, for example, client did not have a bank account on record, and the bank accounts that we are moving across from Standard Lisp are only those bank accounts where there's a regular debit order or a regular withdrawal in place, because then we know that that bank account is open and valid and secure. And so, particularly when it comes to payments, we have to be very careful. Some clients have several bank accounts on record at Lisp, and if they're not in use, we don't necessarily know which one is the right one. And so, if you want to do a switch or you want to do a top up on a client account, you can go ahead as soon as we activate those client accounts on Innate, you can do that. The only exception is if you want to do a withdrawal and the client does not yet have a bank account on record, then it's important that they create their profile, you load the bank account, and then client can go on and approve that bank account so that you can process the withdrawal, or collect a future debit order for that matter. So that was just the one exception, George. So by and large, you don't need to get them to activate their accounts, except if they don't have a bank account on record, then you'll have to load the bank account, then they have to log in, approve it, and then you're off to the races.
Thanks, Mike. And of course, part of part of if you want to activate your account as a client, part of the process is that you do need an email address. Theo is a little bit concerned about that. He feels he's got older clients who don't have an email address and don't want one. What are your thoughts around that, Mike?
Yeah, that's a common pain point, George. I mean, we're working on that one quite actively. So let's just talk about brand new clients, and we'll get back to Elevate clients shortly. So at the moment, most clients have an email address or they're digitally savvy and they don't mind going to find a secure link in their inbox, clicking it, and then creating a profile for themselves. And that client onboarding journey where they have to tick the boxes and agree to our T's and C's, approve their first bank account, and then there's some tax details as well you have to sort of sign up to as a new client. That's a once-off process. It can be cumbersome if you get lost. So there's a happy path, and some clients are quite fine. But if you get your password wrong or you don't click on the link right or whatever, there are opportunities for that to go wrong. Now, to remedy that, we are going to be simplifying that process next year. So give clients an opportunity to do a much more simplified version, perhaps give you the opportunity to receive a one-time PIN via SMS or email, and then go through that similar kind of journey, but it's much more immediate, and advisor can be in control of that. So we recognize that the email going to an inbox is probably not the most optimal way to do that. And so we're looking at alternative ways to do that. Hopefully that'll be available March, April next year. For Elevate
Thanks, Mike.
clients
Yeah.
specifically, as I mentioned on the bank account issue, so your elderly clients at Standard Lisp, they don't necessarily need to log in for you to switch or process any other static detail amendments, etc. But if they're battling to log in, you can always contact us with their bank details, and we'll load them in the back end, and then you can go on for some of those elderly clients who perhaps don't have access to the internet. So that's for Elevate clients who've moved across. We can make a plan with those.
But I think it's important to recognize that the login details and the password for Innate will be different from any login and password that a client had with Stanley Lisp. Those aren't coming across, um, are they, Mike?
Correct. So it is a brand new system. So we do issue new credentials to all clients, and that's via a secure link. Each client gets their own unique sort of sign up ID. There is a way if you get locked out, you can just ask us to resend that link. And we've dealt with several hundred calls where we had to get on a phone call with a client to help them navigate and find. Sometimes the email goes to the spam folder, for example, and our call center is sort of standing by to help with that if your clients struggle.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. Um, Vinesh just has a question, just coming back to that onboarding process, the onboarding for an advisor process. Will new broker house agreements be needed? I think you covered that, but let's just make it absolutely clear how that's going to work for advisors as we move into T3 and that if they're not registered on Innate yet. So just if you wouldn't mind just answering Vinesh just on that, if
Yeah.
you wouldn't mind, Mike.
So we hold an agreement with the broker house or with the advice firm at the firm level, and so you won't need to sign a new terms of business for each advice firm. Sorry, for each individual advisor. It is at the firm level. But for those brokers who have not yet um, engaged with us, or their firm hasn't engaged with us, we'll push that prompt to you to sort of sign up to the T's and C's on login post March next year. Obviously, we'd prefer you to get your secure login to test the system out, to become accustomed to where you're going to find all your client credentials well in advance of March. Um, but yes, there is a requirement to do a new agreement for each advice firm, many of which we've already done. So, I mean, George and team, there's been a massive drive to onboard and focusing primarily on our existing Standard Lisp users to onboard all those advisors into Innate. And I think that's going along really, really well. So it's really we're hoping it's just a small tail of advisors who we didn't quite get to or weren't paying attention for March, April, but pretty much everyone should be in the queue by then.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mike. A couple of questions. One particularly from Mo. What's happening about commission statements and advisor fees? Obviously, it's done a little bit differently on Innate. Let's just explain for the audience what they'll experience from an advisor fee perspective.
Yeah, I think it's possibly just good to remind advisors how Standard Lisp calculates commission. So at the moment, Standard Lisp runs on roughly an eighth to an eighth month, the eighth of this month to the eighth of next month. And then they also take a snapshot of the market value of those client accounts on a particular date. And then they pay your monthly ongoing advice fee as a percentage of that market value. On Innate, it's a calendar month daily accrual process, and then that ongoing advice fee is paid the first or second Thursday of the month after that accrual is complete. So Innate looks at every single day in the month and then aggregates all those days and then pays after. And I think transitioning from the Standard Lisp way of doing things into the Innate way of doing things certainly has required me to do some mental gymnastics and certainly lots of explainers. But we're going to be enriching our FAQs with a nice picture to show you this. And essentially, what we're going to be doing is you receive your Standard Lisp payment on roughly the 10th of March. We're going to do a special accrual from the 10th to roughly the 20th, which will also be paid on Standard Lisp. And those are for all clients who are in scope for Elevate, so that you get your the portion, the days that you were on Standard Lisp up until the migration date will pay on Lisp. And then for the remaining days in March, when client has effectively landed on Innate, we will do a daily accrual and pay that as part of the fee process on Innate. And so for the month of March, your ongoing advice fee is going to be broken up into a few different pieces, but I guarantee you that we are only charging clients once and we're not missing any days. So those are the two important points. And we also had to get you up to and paid up to and including the end of March. So that'll be an important thing to note. And so your innate payment for those clients will look small because it's only a few days of the March month that you receive in April. April will then
Yeah.
be the first full month of ongoing fees which you'll receive from Innate, and that's paid in May. And from thereafter, your monthly fees will be much more predictable. And just a reminder that we accrue daily at Innate. So if your client leaves midway through a month, you'll still get paid for those days. Let's say they move on the 15th, you'll get paid for 15 days of that month. Whereas on Standard List, you used to miss out on those fees. So I think hopefully we're moving to a better system, better way of doing things that's fair for client and advisor. But also just sort of paying attention and seeing where your different amounts come through on your commission statements over the tranche period. And we're happy to help you with any explainers. But in principle, that's how it's going to work.
And I think it's fair to say, understandably, we've had quite a lot of queries around this from the T2 tranche. But in every single instance, we've been able to explain it, and there haven't actually been any issues. But it is something you've just got to watch during the month of March. You're going to be paid 3 times for March. So twice from Stanlib and once from Innate. And quite often advisors forget about that last little bit of March, which is going to be paid at the beginning of April on the Innate part, on the Innate platform. Thanks, Mike. And I'm sure we'll go through that again because it's quite a lot to get your head around. And as you say, we'll build up the FAQs to explain that in even more detail than it is at the moment. Question from Matthew here around fund availability and fund selection. So as you come onto the Innate platform, can you explain what you have access to and then how you get access to a wider range of funds? Obviously, I just want to reiterate the Innate platform is an open architecture platform, and yeah, it's really has been designed very much for the IFA. But perhaps you could just explain a little bit about the fund architecture, Mike.
So yeah, the fund architecture at Innate is very flexible. In fact, we often host multiple classes of the same fund, and so for example, some DFMs have access to classes only for DFM model portfolios. And we have some rules. If a client leaves, they need to leave if a client leaves the DFM, we have to a month later move them out of the model portfolio version of the class. So Innate can host multiple versions of the same unit trust fund. And from an IFA perspective, IFAs have access to a very broad universe of funds. And as far as I know, these match by and large all of the Standard List funds. There may be some niche funds from back in the day that Standard List currently has, which we haven't loaded, but I think the coverage is 95% versus the Standard List fund list. And then in addition to what you have access to sort of as a default as an IFA, you can also craft your own fund universe. Perhaps you have some in-house funds managed for you. We can load those on a restricted basis so that you and your fellow advisors in your firm can access and provide those to your clients. And again, there's just a little bit of work to sort of load those, map those, make sure that you get access to those. But we call them restricted funds. So any firm-specific funds which you want to access, and we can host those for you. And then obviously there's the model portfolios offering. If you work with the DFM, we can host your model portfolios and make those available via the online journey. So I'm just reading Matthew's question. Some of the funds I need for the quote notice. I think Matthew, just let us know which funds are missing, and we'll go and investigate that for you.
Absolutely. And I think on that fund, the funds available, Grant's also asked if he can do a transfer from Stanlib UT onto Innate and whether there would be a CGT around that.
Yeah, so Innate can accept unit transfers from multiple other providers, and certainly from Standard UT, we can do a transfer to Innate, and as long as the client stays invested in the units, you can avoid CGT.
Exactly. And I think it's maybe some people will be asking, why would you want to do that? Well, there's loads of reasons why you might want to consolidate all your clients' investments on one platform, particularly to take benefit of the pricing aggregation we've got at client level, and of course family aggregation as well. So there's all sorts of reasons why you might want to bring it all together in one place. And of course, you get a consistent servicing experience and a consistent reporting experience, just simplifying your life as much as possible.
Yeah, sorry,
Mike,
George, just
I'd
something
like
to
to,
add on the
yes,
UT transfer.
yes,
So um,
go on.
people obviously they often say obviously, but it may not be that obvious. When you're accessing a unit trust fund class direct with a Manco, it is usually their full retail fee, whereas on a platform, there's generally a platform fee class available. And so yes, you can do a unit transfer, but once you land on platform, you need to be in the platform fee class to really get the full benefits of the platform. And that switch, as long as it's intra-fund, does not attract CGT. So to move from the A class to C class or whatever it is, I think as long as it's intra-fund, then that switch does not cater for CGT. Some platforms do it automatically. Others have different ways of dealing with it. But as long as you confirm that, then obviously there's no CGT. If you're moving to a different fund, there would be CGT naturally.
Thanks, Mike. Mike, I'd like to touch on some of the important dates that are coming up, important things for people to realize and advisors to understand that's happening as we move closer to T3. Important dates particularly on the Standard List side. Do you want to go through some of those for us?
Yeah, thanks, George. I think the first one to talk about is the Section 14 transfer in process. So transfers in typically take anywhere between 2 weeks and 6 months, right? So we really would hate for clients to start a transfer in to Standard Lisp and then come March next year, they're still in transit and we don't know where they're going. So we want all client data to settle down and be sort of quite stable by the time we do the live migration in March. And so from the end of actually, I think from last week, we've sort of stopped. We've encouraged Section 14s to only go to Innate from now on, and Standard Lisp won't be sort of accepting Section 14 transfers in. The next sort of big iteration of that change will be to close Standard Lisp to brand new clients. So any clients who've never had an account with us, we won't be accepting those from January onwards. And again, to sort of encourage those accounts to start afresh on Innate as their new journey. The last thing we really want is a client to arrive in January and then a month later you've moved to a new platform. And so brand new client accounts no longer on Standard Lisp from January. And then the last bit is existing clients. I did mention it earlier, but you can do top ups, withdrawals, switches to your heart's content, all the way up to tax year end cutoff. We don't have the dates just yet. We're still looking at the days, but it's roughly the middle of February. So get your RA top ups in well in time for us to process them at Standard Lisp. And then your full client account will move across in March. I'm just checking, George, did I miss anything there?
No, I think you've got everything there. And I think as we get closer, there's already been some communication about the restriction of transfers into Standard List. So we've already started communicating that to our audience. But I think it's important, like you say, we give the heads up about no new clients being accepted on Standard List. Existing clients, no problem, they can transact as they like, but no new clients on Standard List from January. I think that's great. Um, so I want to talk about some of the benefits of Innate, which I think are coming through in a couple of questions, and I think we can answer them by talking about some of the really cool tools that I think we've or you particularly, Mike, and your team have developed on Innate, and particularly around Instructions Tracker and how advisors can use Instructions Tracker to track what's happening. And I can see a couple of people saying, "Oh, how do I know when my clients accepted their T's and C's? How do I know when something has happened?" Perhaps you could just explain a little bit more about how good that tool is and really some of the benefits that it adds to the advisor's life.
Yeah. I mean, George, personally, I hate call centers. I don't like being placed on hold. I don't like phoning and explaining to another human what my problem is. And so actually, we don't want you to phone us. Let's be honest. Okay, like you don't want to phone us. We'd love to hear from you, but I want to help advisors and their assistants self-serve and get an answer to their problem or issue or whatever question they have as quickly as possible, without having to carve out time in your diary to phone us or email us and then wait for a response. And so, Instruction Tracker was the first sort of step towards self-sufficiency, and it really is. I mean, um, I think we've taken a lot of criticism for it, but we're trying to be as proactive and transparent as possible. And so what you see on Instruction Tracker is effectively the up-to-date status of all of the workflows that are happening across all the various transactions that you can do on Innate. So that is really like you're looking directly into our back office engine, and all those statuses are reporting directly to the web. And so for up-to-date information, the Instruction Tracker is certainly the go-to place, and those update in real time. And so there's a massive drive within operations to make sure we get those workflows closed off quickly, that you can see those real-time status updates happening. And so you mentioned client accepting T's and C's. We've expanded the range of interactions and transactions that you can track on Instructions Tracker. And so that really puts the pressure on us to make sure that all of our workflows are closed off and the status on that Instruction Tracker is as true as possible and up to date for advisor and assistant, you know, and to not have to phone us if they don't absolutely have to.
Absolutely, Mike. And I think, there's been some tremendous developments in that tool in the last few months. You now can see your whole book, anything that's open, you can see your whole book in one place. What's outstanding from a document perspective, and where each of your client transactions are. So it's really, I think it's a world leading tool. And those people that use it effectively really, really like it. So definitely, completely agree with all the lovely development that's coming through on that. I want to just switch gears and just look at Bold or Liberty Living Annuity. People call it those two names interchangeably. What's happening with Bold, and is that going to come across in T3?
Yeah, currently in scope for tranche three. I guess there's two big parts of Bold. There's we call it the vanilla Bold, which is the Liberty Living Annuity part with no guarantee. And that looks and feels and behaves exactly like a living annuity does today on Innate. There are some fee differences, but we'll cater for those as part of the tranche. And certainly, we're hoping to move the bulk of the vanilla bold across as part of the in scope of tranche three. We will know at the end of September whether that's definitely in or not. And then and that's sort of I'm 80% confident
End
it'll
of
be in.
November. I think you mean end of November, not end of September.
Sorry, end of November, yeah. Uh, and then the high water mark guarantee is I think the bold product is certainly evolving. They are going to be making some changes to that, and some of those comms have already gone to market. But just in terms of hosting the clients who have an existing high watermark guarantee in that product, we have prepared the way for them. We're standing up a portion of Innate to be able to host those high watermark guarantees and track them and make sure clients get all the right features and benefits. And at the moment, that's in scope for tranche three, but I'm probably amber as to whether it'll actually make it or not. And so in other words, clients with the high watermark guarantee, and we will host them on Innate in future, but they may form part of a mop-up tranche post tranche three. And so that's kind of where we are with Bold.
And Mike, you touched on something there, but I think it's worth just highlighting. Um, where where a client moves across and there's a different fee on Innate, how are you handling that? I think this is really important for advisors to make sure they understand and get comfortable.
Yeah. So a reminder, the fee, investment admin fees at Innate are exactly the same tiering and methodology that we have at Standard Lisp today. So for every single client, I guarantee you it will be exactly the same fee or better. And the reason I say or better is because at Innate, we do automatic aggregation at an ID level. We also give you the option of collating a couple of family accounts together as a family group. And then there's some offshore aggregation as well coming with SBI. And so I think just in terms of the vanilla client moving from Standard Lisp to Innate, there will be the exact same fee that they were on, or better in some instances because of aggregation. Now, there are many
Thanks. Yeah.
clients with legacy fee discounts. In 2018, we went through a whole rigmarole to reset the base. We knew this day was coming, and so we aligned the Standard Lisp and Innate fee methodologies to be exactly the same. What that meant was we sort of shut down the practice of some of the legacy client fee discounts. And what we did with those clients, many of them, is we just sort of froze their fee discount. So there's some clients sitting on a fixed 25 basis points. You can't get access to that anymore, but we will honor those into perpetuity. So if you are on a special fee, we're going to move you across at the same rate that you were on at Standard Lisp. And a good example of that is the tax-free savings account. So the tax-free savings account is currently a fixed 20 basis points, excluding VAT. We're going to move those clients across at exactly the same fee rate. The only caveat, because you can't have your cake and eat it, and unfortunately I have to run a platform, is that those assets, while we'll keep them at the fixed rate, client will pay exactly the same fee that they did before. Those assets that are on sort of historical fees won't count towards aggregation if client has other accounts on the platform. So in other words, you'll be in the same place you were with Stanlib, but it won't count towards aggregation. You as advisor can always choose to move client off of their historical special fee onto the prevailing platform fee. And that may make sense now that they have access to various levels of aggregation. And so you can just tell us to move them across. We'll move them from the flat 20 or whatever they were on before onto the prevailing platform fee, which then does aggregation. And that's a one-way door. We can't go back. So it's like you can have the best of both worlds, but you can only have that choice once, if that makes sense, George.
Absolutely spot on. And I think it's worth actually talking about whether there are minimums on Innate and what about the minimum fee as well. I see Johan's talking about, oh, I've got clients who've got premiums of 100 Rand per month. What happens to those guys? I also see you're talking about standard unit trust there. Remember, this is a standard Lisp movement, not UT. And I've seen a couple of questions coming in about UT. Maybe we can just touch on what's, if there's a plan in place for UT going forward, Mike.
So remember, there's no minimum on Innate in terms of account balance, but there is a minimum Rand fee of, I call it less than a cappuccino a month. These days, cappuccinos have gone up in price, but it's $20 a month plus VAT, so 23 Rand a month. And that is prorated across your accounts. So you can have three accounts and you're paying $23 a month for three different accounts. And that's really up to, if you do the math, about an aggregated balance at an ID level of about 50,000 Rand. So clients above 50,000, that's when you effectively move on to the sliding scale and you pay the 48 basis points plus VAT, again, across all of your aggregated accounts. And so while the example was 100 Rand, and yes, that was a UT example, you can have a 100 Rand debit order on Innate, but it's going to have a 23 Rand a month admin fee. So I guess like platforms are for certain clients. We want to be able to help everyone. And we think like 23 Rand as a monthly fee is very reasonable for like the level of platform capability that we deliver.
Absolutely, Mike. And we've got a lot of clients who just have a regular smaller debit order going off and benefit from the fact that there are no minimum investments on Innate. What about PSPs? Where are we with PSPs? You mentioned everything on Lisp is in scope. Perhaps you can just touch on that for me.
Yeah, so we are well into the build of being able to host PSPs on Innate, and the first version of that will be effectively just to match what we have at standard Lisp today. So really just a basic functionality for existing PSP clients from Lisp so that we can move their balances across and they'll be able to see those PSPs in their accounts. The second part of that would be sort of a lot more ambitious with sort of better reporting and a bit more visibility on the underlying assets, etc., and multiple share brokerages on the back end. And that will be coming later in 2026, which I know our distribution team are very excited about. And many advisors, this is sort of a core element of their proposition. And some advisors don't use PSPs, and that's perfectly fine. But some advisors use them a lot. And so we want to make sure that it sort of lines up with their expectations. So the first step will be March, April, where we just move the current PSP book across. And then the second phase later in 2026 will be a much more sort of bells and whistles version.
Absolutely, we're excited about that. And of course, with that PSP capability you're building, as part of that down the line, I believe you're building ETF capability as well to some extent. Am I right there, Mike?
I guess to the extent that you can hold an ETF via a PSP, it may
Mm.
not make commercial sense to have that, but you won't be able to trade individual single stock ETFs on Innate anytime soon. So there are quite a few. I mean, when we say ETFs, there's sort of like passive tracker type ETFs, and there are unit trust equivalents of those available on the platform today. But yeah, no, you can't trade single stocks on Innate, and we have no plans to do that anytime soon. But certainly within a PSP, if you wanted to hold, if your portfolio manager wanted to hold a stock within that I mean that would be possible because it's actually held off platform.
Thank you, Mike. And I think the capability that's being built around that PSP, I'm really excited with what I see there, and particularly from the reporting perspective as well. Um, just one last question. I think Matthew has asked around the transfer. Being able to transfer some of the older legacy Liberty products, which traditionally have penalties attached to them, and moving them into Innate. I think it's worth just touching on, whenever you move out of those legacy life products, that there is a penalty to pay, whether you're moving to our platform or to another platform. Anything you want to say around that, Mike?
Yeah, look, this is a perennial question. I think that it is important to make that process as smooth as possible. We would obviously we would much prefer those assets to stay within the group, and we certainly have worked with the Liberty teams to make some of those transfers go a lot more smoothly. Um, at the end of the day, there are product specific fees and penalties which you sort of need to make a decision at a client level if it makes sense to incur those or not. In almost all the cases, I have not seen the product provider waive any of those penalties to keep the assets within the group. Now, I'm not saying that won't change in future, but you also have to recognize that those products were sold, some of them 15, 20 years ago, and under a very different regime. So I agree. Like platforms have arrived, and your wealth should be on a platform at a much more transparent, visible fee. We have to find a way to sort of transition clients into the new world, and I agree it should be a lot smoother. But it's easy to say that, but it's very difficult to make it happen in practice.
I think that's absolutely spot on, Mike. Mike, I'm seeing in the questions before I wrap up. I'm seeing in the questions a few questions which are very specific to specific scenarios, specific situations that have cropped up. We're going to get the team to go through all of these questions and make sure they're all answered, and people get back to you to make sure that you get the right answer to your specific query. Lots and lots of questions. I want to thank all of you for being so engaged in today's webinar. It really makes it so much more valuable to both us and the audience as well. But that really brings us to the end of our webinar today on Elevate. Like I said, there'll be plenty more engagements, and please do feel free to either email into someone like me or Mike, or into the Hello at Innate team if you have any further questions on Elevate. But I hope today has given you a good insight into, the second leg, if you like, of our journey as we get closer and closer to Elevate T3 date in March. I want to say thank you very much to Mike for giving us such a great overview and answering the questions so fully and transparently. And hopefully a lot of you will feel reassured about where we're going and the safety of your clients' assets as we move them across into the new platform world. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, George. We'll see everyone hopefully on the next webinar. And all the questions we didn't get to, we've tracked them, we'll list them, and we'll get back to you individually. So thank you so much for the participation today. I really valued it.
Innate is a registered trademark of Stanlib Wealth Management Pty Limited, an authorized financial services provider.